Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Governor Spencer Cox, and I have the pleasure today of hosting the first One Utah Student Town Hall. And my preferred pronouns are he, him, and his.
All right, well, will the real Governor Cox please stand up? This episode is brought to you by the new Philosophies of Men cruise. This is November 9th through 16th, 2024. Me and Bruce Porter will be talking about eternal laws, doctrine, and how to fortify yourself and your family against an increasingly woke world. This is something I have researched for 12 years, and there are gospel answers to help clarify the difference between the cultural shifts that we're seeing now that are damaging so many of our kids and adults, and the unwavering doctrines and eternal laws of God. Please come join us November 9th to 16th on the Philosophies of Men cruise. You can go to cwicmedia.com, that's CWICmedia.com, go to trips and events at the top, and scroll down to the Philosophies of Men. We'll see you there. So I don't know if I've ever seen this in a politician before. And I'm not a Utahn, so I'm not as close to this topic as many of you are, but I've done a lot of research on Governor Cox. I covered him very closely back when he was campaigning and in his first year. This guy's a completely different person today, or at least his policies are completely different. The question is are they real? You saw the pronouns video at the very beginning here of this episode. That gives you a very clear idea of the framework that he is working from, especially in education, as he begins his term as governor of Utah. Now, shortly after this incident, he removed those pronouns. Why? Was it a mistake? Does he believe that people should express their pronouns, especially from a position of authority, like governor, to young kids K through 12? Does he believe that that is confusing or appropriate? And he goes right along with a pattern, especially in education, that he followed in his first couple of years as governor. And it's no surprise when you realize his largest publicly listed donor for his campaign was the NEA, the National Education Association. This is the largest labor union in the country, and it is a cult. I don't know how else to describe it. Here's their president at their annual convention last year.
That's why I know we will act as if it were possible to radically transform our world every day, all day, in every school, in every community, in every state across this nation.
Now, if you think for a minute that she's talking about improving education, well, you haven't seen this whole convention. This is all about social justice. This is all about activating kids. Fortunately, the NEA is hemorrhaging members right now, and hopefully that trend continues. Just a little more from those that were deeply in bed with Governor Cox.
You will be centered in the work that we have
every day,
been called
all day.
to do together. Every day, all day, we will embrace our resistance as joy. Every day, all day, we will remember who we are. Every
time I listen to that, it just cracks me up. This is an absolute cult, and it's the largest labor union in the country. And they go through this entire convention, which I've actually been through. Yeah, I do those sorts of things. And there is hardly anything, I mean, a few small, sparse words offered about education. It is about revolution and resistance. And it's no wonder when you have the NEA teamed up with Black Lives Matter and you have Black Lives Matter in school, that is a program that is to activate and organize K through 12 kids. Now, here's the question. Why in the world would the National Education Association, a far left organization, be donating so much money to a Republican candidate for governor in the state of Utah? And with that donation, what promises are made? What is tied to that? Now, I don't know the answer to this, but there's a lot that went on with education in the first couple of years with Governor Cox that was made me very uneasy, hoping that these things would spread to places like Arizona in my home state. And honestly, education in Utah is I wouldn't want to be swimming in that mud. I can tell you that. While the governor was in office his first couple of years, the NEA put together several motions to promote critical race theory throughout all schools throughout the United States. This is who he was receiving funds from. And yet at the same time, he's this small town Utah guy that's collecting grassroots money also for his campaign. As governor-elect, he signs a DEI compact talking about anti-racism and systemic racism. All of these terms coming from the far left and wanting to revolutionize not just education, but industry and all institutions. No problem. I'll sign that. Remember, he vetoed Bill HB 112 on transgender athletes in the K-12 space, making room for transgender athletes or males, right, boys, to participate in girls' sports and allowing them to be in girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. He put in some information about how it wasn't clear enough or whatever it was. The bottom line was this should have been very simple. On immigration, I want you to see this. This is from the first half of 2023, just a little over a year ago.
We do need more immigrants in our country. We have so many job openings right now in the state of Utah and in other places that cannot be filled. It's actually hurting our economy that we can't have good people that want to live here.
He also supported policies that would pay for education and many other government programs for immigrants. Now, you know, wherever you stand on that, that's one thing, but this is his tone toward immigration. Granted, he was always saying that the border was a problem and that it was broken. I'll give him that. But a very different tune from where he is today. This is Governor Cox now today on immigration and the recent issues with the mayor of Denver flying in undocumented illegal immigrants to Salt Lake.
Do something about undocumented immigrants bust and flown into Utah. Governor Cox saying he just recently learned of Denver doing this, but it appears he did know of the larger issue months earlier when asked about flights sent from shelters in New York City.
They actually told us that the shelter paid for their plane ticket. Are you aware of this, and is this a concern?
Yeah, it is a concern. And this is when you hear governors say that every state is a border state now, this is exactly what we're talking about.
That question of illegal immigrants flown to Utah from another city happening the beginning of February 4 months ago.
They're taking up resources that we need for our homeless population.
As to what state and city leaders should do.
Okay, so very different. And then going back to the DEI compact he signs at the beginning, talking so much about diversity, equity, and inclusion in several of his speeches. And then late 2023, he signs the bill prohibiting diversity, equity, inclusion, and inclusion in higher education. What does this bill do? It prohibits the funding or maintenance of diversity, equity, and inclusion offices or officers in the system of higher education for state-funded universities and colleges. Okay, hooray. I mean, clap. But again, what in the world? By the way, you got to wonder what BYU is going to do about this. They're not under this bill, but are they going to keep their office of belonging? As several states have now put similar bills in place to get rid of these DEI offices because they're so damaging. So complete flip-flop here from Governor Cox. And again, with a real Governor Cox, please stand up. One thing I missed here on the immigration issue is back in May of this year, 2024, he stated that he wants an ICE detention center in Utah. It is so interesting how these states that are not border states, when they start receiving these immigrants, change their tune. I mean, even New York, they change their tune so quickly. Unlike what we already know here in Arizona. The issues that we face with the border here, or Texas, California. The immigration system is completely running amok. It is completely broken. And it's not just a matter of, oh, we're letting immigrants in. That's not the point. The point is you don't know who you're letting in. I think there were 116 in the last 12 months, 116 individuals that are on the terror hot list, right? The watch list for terrorists. That's just the ones that they found. And how are these individuals assimilating into the culture and into the way of life in America? Anyway, and then there's the transgender issue. In early 2024, January 2024, he signs a bill quickly, as the Salt Lake Tribune says, that changes the legal definitions of female and male to categorize Utahns by the reproductive organs of their birth. In the exact opposite tone as he had with the K-12 transgender bill, he says, we want public facilities that are safe and accommodating for everyone, and this bill increases privacy protections for all. So completely on the other side. Again, did he learn something? Was he completely naive? Or is it an election year? And again, have you ever seen a politician that has switched on so many issues? Interestingly enough, that bill, which changes the definitions, the legal definitions of female and male to categorize Utahns by their reproductive organs, that gives you an idea of really what the agenda is. Don't be fooled. Don't be naive to think that the transgender issue and the non-binary issues are about, well, we just want to have people who identify as something with their gender, so man and woman. That's not the goal. That is a partial deconstruction of what they really want, which is a complete loss of identity of sex and gender. You have this idea, well, gender is simply how I feel, and my biological sex is down here below. My biology is below. And all they want to do is talk about how they feel, and that's their gender, how they identify. That's not true. That is not the end of the goal there. If it wasn't the goal, then organizations like the ACLU would not be asking Governor Cox to veto that bill. It's not about just how you identify. It's a complete destruction of identity, of gender and sex. There's several other initiatives that he has started here, starting mostly last year and into this year, which are completely opposite of his focus and where he was with the DEI and the transgender bills and immigration, etc. in his first couple of years. He's got a Utah Family Office, which is to focus on the traditional family and supporting and supporting policies for the traditional family. He's focused a lot on social media and the harms that causes. That's something I've put out a lot of information on, especially from Jonathan Haidt. He's even gone against the grain, and he's got a task force now on the well-being of men and boys. Sorry, that needs to be duplicated everywhere. What we have done in forgetting the boys and the men in this society is damaging us to no end. So who is who here? Have you ever seen anyone switch on policies like this dramatically? Not just one, right? This isn't an article written up in a local newspaper that's talking about a switch of pace, right? A change of mind on something. And it makes me wonder, was this guy just so green? Did he just not know what he was getting into? Did he allow a malevolent compassion to lead him toward some of these policies that are so destructive? Is he going to relinquish his efforts on SEL and other education nightmares in the K-12 space? Has he learned as he's gone along and figured out, oh, I didn't realize these things were this way. I didn't realize these things were bad. The NEA told me differently. I just wanted social justice. I just wanted racial healing. I just wanted tolerance, empathy without reason. And now that he's learned as he's gone through these things, he's now finally changing. He's found the light. Or is it an election year and he's simply politicking? Now, I don't need to make these decisions. I am not in Utah, but I know a portion of this audience lives in Utah. Maybe you should be asking, for the real Governor Cox to stand up. Thanks for listening.